Tai Lung didn't want to be the Dragon Warrior in the first place. It was what Shifu wanted him to be. But what if Tai Lung actually became the Dragon Warrior? His wish gets fulfilled, but he has to fight alongside Po, the person he hates the most. Tai Lung's story had always been one of ambition and rage, of striving for something that was never truly his. In the original timeline, that ambition led to his downfall. But in this reality, things are going to be different. He still fights Po, but when he saw what was inside the scroll, he clawed his way back to the Jade Palace. Was this a joke all along?
It's nothing!
He doesn't turn on Po. His rage doesn't seek an immediate outlet. His fists don't clench to strike. His claws do not move to tear something apart. Instead, he runs. Not out of fear, not out of weakness, but out of desperation. He needs answers. That desperation leads him back to the place where everything had begun. Shifu lay in the courtyard, unmoving. Tai Lung had thought this moment would bring him victory. Seeing his master broken at his feet and looking at what was inside the scroll would finally make him feel complete. But as he dropped to one knee beside Shifu, staring at the frail, barely breathing figure, something burned inside him, and for the first time, it wasn't anger. "You should have given it to me," he muttered. The words felt hollow now. Lacking the conviction they once held, Shifu didn't respond. He barely moved. Tai Lung swallowed hard, looking away. He hated this feeling, the weight in his chest, the ache in his throat. He had fought for this. This was supposed to fix everything, and yet it hadn't. The words left him before he could stop them. "I forgive you." Shifu's eyes fluttered open, just slightly, but he said nothing. Tai Lung didn't know why he had said it. Maybe to convince himself that he had won. Maybe because some small, buried part of him actually wanted to believe it. But it changed something. Days passed. Shifu recovered. The Valley of Peace remained intact. Tai Lung did not leave, but he was not welcomed either. The villagers feared him. The Furious Five barely acknowledged him. He wasn't imprisoned, but he wasn't trusted. It was suffocating. And then one night, under a sky too quiet for what he had endured, Shifu called for him. "You've done well," the old master said. Tai Lung scoffed. He had done nothing, but Shifu studied him carefully, as he always had. "You forgave me," he said, "and yet you stayed." Tai Lung frowned. He didn't know what he had been expecting, but it wasn't this. "I see it now," Shifu continued. "The darkness inside you, it has lifted." Tai Lung wanted to laugh, but he didn't. What did it matter if his darkness had lifted? He was still second place. He had lost. Po was still the Dragon Warrior, and he hated him. But Shifu wasn't finished. "You are ready." The words landed differently this time. They had been spoken to him before, but now, after everything, they felt wrong. Tai Lung had spent his entire life waiting to hear them. But now that they had come, he wasn't sure what to feel. "You will stand beside Po," Shifu continued. "You will be the Dragon Warrior." The title he had once tried to steal was now being given to him, but not alone. Not as the sole, rightful heir to Oogway's vision. He would share it. Tai Lung had proven himself, but it still wasn't enough. He wasn't enough. He defended the valley, crushed threats before they even reached the gates, and stood as a force no enemy could overcome. The people whispered about him, wondering if he was the true successor to Oogway. Shifu beamed with pride, watching the warrior he had always believed Tai Lung could become, but none of it mattered, because Po still existed. Po, who had done none of the work Tai Lung had. Po, who laughed too loud, stumbled through training, and yet had the love of the Furious Five, the villagers, even Shifu. No matter how disciplined Tai Lung was, no matter how many battles he won, Po was liked. And when Shifu gave Po even the smallest bit of attention, Tai Lung felt the burn in his chest. The same burn he had felt in the courtyard. The same burn that made him run from the palace after unrolling the scroll. Why had he needed to prove himself to be accepted while Po had everything handed to him? It only made Tai Lung double down. He trained harder, pushed himself beyond every limit. If Po relied on luck, then Tai Lung would rely on undeniable victory. If there was no secret ingredient, then he would become it. Because if Po had been chosen by fate, then Tai Lung would make fate choose him instead. He was still in denial. Legends shaped the Valley of Peace, tales of warriors, destiny, and a prophecy of a chosen one, a dragon warrior meant to bring balance. Tai Lung had spent his life believing he was that warrior, but Po had been the one chosen. Master Shifu had given him a purpose. The valley had accepted his protection, but in the eyes of the world, in the whispers of villagers and warriors alike, there was still doubt. Who was the true dragon warrior? So when the warnings of a warlord from Gongmen City spread through the valley, Tai Lung had seen it for what it was. A chance to prove that he had always been meant for more. Lord Shen. If Tai Lung could take down Lord Shen, the prophecy would be his to claim. The true dragon warrior will take him down. Shen had built his empire on intelligence, not just power. When he heard of a black and white warrior destined to end his reign, he simply erased them. The pandas and the snow leopards. The prophecy itself. Or so he thought, because the dragon warrior still stood. In fact, now there were two. Oogway had been wrong. Po was never meant to be the dragon warrior, and Tai Lung was going to prove it. When Shen falls, the world would finally know who the real dragon warrior is. They traveled together, both following the advice of Shifu, trying to find inner peace, or so it appeared. Tai Lung was mostly distant from everyone. He had one agenda: take down Shen, so he'll be the ultimate dragon warrior. Through the misty harbor, the sound of war thundered across Gongmen City. Wolves swarmed the streets, moving in ruthless synchronization, their orders sharp, precise. As Tai Lung, Po, and the Furious Five are captured, they meet with Shen. They surrender, secretly planning to destroy him, and they do when Mantis frees them all. They all attack in unison. As Po is distracted by his visions, Tai Lung takes this opportunity to end him, but Shen is sharp enough to use his weapons. He manages to escape. Tai Lung tries to go after Shen, but with Gongmen Palace coming down, he couldn't follow him too far. The sky was dark, the air thick with the scent of smoke and steel. The group had barely escaped, their bodies aching from battle, their minds racing. Po sat apart from them, staring at the ground, lost in thought. Tigress confronts him. They lost Shen because Po lost focus. Tai Lung and the rest were in danger because of him. But as Po shared that he remembers seeing Shen the last time he saw his parents, Tigress sympathizes with him but worries about him. Tai Lung, standing at a distance, felt something unfamiliar stir inside him. A deep satisfaction, twisted and quiet. He wouldn't say it out loud, but Po had lost something too. He wasn't alone in this. Tai Lung had heard enough. He didn't need to wait for their plan. He didn't need them at all. By the time the Furious Five turned to leave, Tai Lung was gone. They searched the ruins, calling his name, but he had vanished into the shadows, slipping away unnoticed. While everyone had been concerned about Po, he had already made his decision. He would fulfill his prophecy alone. The Furious Five had no choice but to continue without him and Po. They moved swiftly, pushing toward Shen's cannon factory, determined to stop him before he could strike again. But when they arrived, Tai Lung came out of nowhere and attacked him first. The battle had already begun. He tore through Shen's guards with ruthless precision, a blur of fury and force. He moved like a storm, his strikes sharp, his body a weapon. But Shen was waiting for him. The five didn't hesitate. They leapt in, joining the fight, trying to overwhelm Shen with sheer numbers. As Po had still followed the Furious Five, he joined in to lay his count of punches. He charged in with his usual energy, rolling into the fight, determined to take his chances. Shen barely seemed fazed. Even surrounded, even outnumbered, he smiled. He knew he needed to separate them to take over them. And there, he revealed his secret weapon. His next words hit harder than any punch, taking down both of the dragon warriors. He was the one who had destroyed the pandas and the snow leopards, all the black and white creatures, so he could stop the prophecy from fulfilling. Po was left in the radish delivery, and Tai Lung was left at the Jade Palace. There was no accident, no mistake. He had planned it, making sure no black and white creatures were left. Everything went quiet for a moment. The fire, the cannons, the fighting, it all faded. Tai Lung felt the weight of those words crush him. His whole life, he had believed he was abandoned, because he wasn't good enough, that if he just proved himself, he would finally earn his place. But the truth was much worse. There was no family left, no lost home to return to. There was only emptiness. Seeing everyone in a moment of shock, Shen fired with his cannons, separating all of them. The force sent everyone flying, their bodies thrown back, crashing through wood and stone, disappearing into the river below. But Tai Lung was fast enough to dodge and attack the true monster of his life. The one who separated him from his family gave him a destiny that no one was sure anymore if it was his. He kept trying to land at least one punch on him, outraged and reckless. But then 3 cannons fired at once. The blast tore through the battlefield. The heat, the force, it swallowed everything. When the smoke cleared, Tai Lung lay motionless, his body crumpled beside Tigress, barely conscious. Shen was laughing. The battle was over, until Po rose from the river, calm, focused, at peace. He had found something in himself, something beyond pain, beyond anger. And with that clarity, he struck. The cannons turned, the force of the battle shifting. The tide had changed. Po wasn't fighting with anger. He was fighting with purpose, and Shen never stood a chance. He took down Shen just like that. The war was over. But Tai Lung wasn't celebrating. As he lay there, aching, breathless, everything inside him twisted into something darker, something deeper. The prophecy had never been his. It had always been Po. His family was killed for nothing. His race was killed for nothing. His life was ruined for someone else's destiny. His vision blurred, his fists clenched, his body weak, but his anger burned hotter than ever. He swore, right then and there, he would never let Po take down another enemy. He would be the one to do it first, and he would prove once and for all that he was better than the Dragon Warrior. The war wasn't over, not for Tai Lung. Shen was gone, but the truth he left behind burned hotter than any battle. The prophecy was never his. His strength, his victories, they meant nothing. So now he would carve his own fate,